Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Center for Leadership and Organizational Effectiveness 52 Weeks of Leadership Series, sponsored by Geico. And before I introduce our speaker for today, I'd like to remind you of the upcoming CLOE Leadership Conference, which is coming up very quickly on Thursday, June 3rd from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's called The Future of Leadership, Changing the Way We Live and Work, which, in addition to featuring a keynote speaker speech from New York Times bestselling author Daniel Pink, excuse me, there will be more than 30 leadership workshops at this conference offered by the UB School of Management in areas such as artificial intelligence, data analytics, racial equity, entrepreneurship, healthcare, sustainability, ethical leadership, and lots of other leadership topics. So if you haven't yet registered, please do so after today's presentation. And it is a pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Anthony Bellani, who, in addition to being owner and chief catalyst at Apex Leader Growth, has also served as a leadership coach for our programs at CLOE. Anthony's lifelong work is with creativity and innovation. It's evidenced by a most eclectic career that includes producing the storied Artists and Models Affair, designing and managing nightclubs, and co-hosting a nationally syndicated late night TV show, which I've seen, it's pretty cool, for more than 25 years. Anthony's an expert in applying creativity towards effective and innovative solutions. And now he coaches clients and teams to get better, faster in all that they're seeking to achieve. He lives in Buffalo with his life partner and 2 children. His passion for cycling leads him to ride 550 miles across New York State in a week to raise funds for Roswell Park Comprehensive Cancer Center. He's a good friend, a great peer, and an expert in the field of creativity. Anthony?
Well, thanks, Rick. I really appreciate it. It's really great to know you and work with you and be such a great part of UB School of Management. The program at CLOE is groundbreaking. The EMBA program is awesome, and I just feel like I'm part of a really great clan in bringing the cutting edge of leadership. And I'm really honored to be here today to talk about my passion, which is creativity. And so let's get started. And being in creativity, it's very engaging. I just couldn't resist. I got to engage you all. And I got to get a poll from you and ask this first question. Let's get this here. Are you creative? And just go to the first one. If you're very creative, a little, not at all, let's hear what we have to say. And do you have an imagination? Well, this is coming in pretty nicely. We got about almost all of us in here. Looks like most people are a little creative. We got some very creatives. Welcome. Few not at all, which I like to see that we're getting away from not at all in these days, and that's proof of what we're going to talk about today. So I think we got a few more left, but let's just go with what we have here. 93% have an imagination, and 60%, about 65% are either a little or not at all creative. Okay, you could take that down, Peter. Thank you very much. So we just found out whether you have an imagination. So let's get into what we're going to talk about. So I'm not sure if you realize that the fellows on the side here, Alex Osborne and Sid Parnes, Alex is the O in the BBD&O advertising agency whose name still lives on today. And he invented brainstorming, believe it or not. And he's from Buffalo. And he was a guy who watched what people were doing in the world, in the United States during World War II, and saw this incredible creative output and wondered, why can't we do this all the time? He really believed that people truly solve problems naturally. I said he's the originator of brainstorming, and he wanted to make an invention among everybody more deliberate. He just didn't know how to do it. So he met this guy, Dr. Sid Parnes, who came to his first conference, which is still going on, the Creative Problem Solving Institute, in 1954. Sid Parnes was taken by everything he heard at Alex's first conference, left his work as a trainer in Pittsburgh, moved his family and came to Buffalo and began doing what Alex had hoped, which is to turn his work into processes and teaching. And through their work together, they formed the world's first program to teach creativity. Believe it or not, it started at UB in the Millard Fillmore College, and then it moved over to Buffalo State College, and also is the world's first master's program in creativity. And they've been developing this process ever since. It's been researched by hundreds of people. It's still taught at the school at Buffalo State College. So let's take a look at how it works and what it does. The first thing they came up with was a process that drives creative problem solving. And it is two concepts of divergent thinking and convergent thinking. Divergent thinking is what gets us out of the thought of, well, we're not very creative. The first thing you want to do to fuel your imagination is to get rid of that judge. Stop saying it won't work. The boss won't like it. We don't have enough money. There's not enough time. Just leave that judgment aside and start to accept novelty. Leave the idea that that's ridiculous or that's so funny, I got to laugh. And just let it live, let it grow, let it build into other ideas. That makes me think of something else. And you want to end up with a lot of quantity. And when it comes time to start to choose, the first thing we don't do is throw a dart on the wall and pick the first thing that seems to be reasonable. We put a process in place to choose deliberately. We stay focused on the objectives. We continue to stay out of our comfort zone and keep novelty alive. And most importantly, we stay very affirmative that we will find the solutions that we are seeking. So let's take a look at the process that we actually follow from the moment you realize you have a thorny problem. And we know what Einstein says, that if you try and solve a problem with the mindset that you have, when you realize it, you're not going to be too successful. So this process, in as little as a couple hours to a few days, depending on how thorny and complex the people, the problem, and the situation is, can lead you through in an organized fashion using those concepts of divergent and convergent thinking from start to finish. So you go from clarifying a challenge to generating ideas to developing solutions to implementing action. So let's just follow along and I'll walk you through it, and then I'll answer any questions that you have as we go through it. So in the first stage, what we do is generate a wish or a challenge statement. And again, it's like, let's just say that we lost a lot of walk-in customers during COVID. That statement in itself can be transformed to, gee, I wish we could get a lot more customers back. I wish we could get customers. I wish we could get new customers back. Wouldn't it be great if we found a whole new way to do business after COVID by just starting to morph your thinking toward the future? That's what this really is all about. And you use a stem called in front of the statement, it would be great. And then your next step is to gather data. And most people associate data with just the facts, ma'am. Well, the truth is we like to also include feelings, assertions, lies, truths, arguments, every possible thing, every elephant in the room, every favored nation, everything you don't want to talk about. Let's get it all out. the more that's out on the table, the more opportunity you have to really finally figure out what is the problem we have. This kind of relates to how Covey says, let's put the ladder against the right building. So you go from this statement, it would be great, um, by combining all the facts and data that you could possibly come up with using divergent and convergent thinking to a question. Turn it into a question. And when you have a question, it begs an answer. How might we? How to? In what ways might we? There you have completed the clarify the challenge statement. And with this question, how might we, you go into ideation phase, the place where most everybody pegs all the work that we do, all the brainstorming. And you see an article every couple of years, brainstorming doesn't work. Well, it's really about how it's applied and how it's done that maybe leads people to think that it doesn't work well. One of the things that people don't quite get about brainstorming is that we have found through our work that there's a rule of thirds, that when you start brainstorming, the first thing that comes out are all the facts. Because of our tunnel vision that we walk around in the world with, we just, what's on the top of our brain. And then you start to maybe think about something interesting, but it is not until you get to that third, and a skilled facilitator can really bring this out in people, of these truly flowing, generative, new types of thinking that doesn't freak people out. They don't want to leave the room. They want to stick with it, and they want to start building on it. You get a little momentum, you get a little traction, and then you start to converge on a wall full of ideas. Again, not just by pulling one off and saying, "Great, let's run with this." It's not the time. You build on that by highlighting what people feel are the best questions, the best ideas, and turn those into clusters and themes. And those themes then start to give you some guidelines on what you might start doing from the question that you just posed. And you go from the question to your next STEM statement. And that goes again, remember, we started with the wish, we went to a question, and now we're starting to determine what we're going to do. And we say what we see ourselves doing, ... And most people say, oh, great, we got it. Now we can go. Well, I say, hold on. We still have one more thing to do. We start to list all the things we love about it. Yeah, and you notice I went silent. If there's silence after someone asks, what do we love about it? It's kind of a signal in itself. You kind of want to step back. But if people start peeling off lots of ideas, oh yeah, it'll be great. Then it'll, you have the beginning of something great. And then you start to plug in your criteria and your potentials of what it's going to do for us, what it's going to bring us. That's where you start to make the rubber meet the road. It should be done in the fourth quarter. It should be done with this level of budget. Only this team can be working on it. All these sorts of things start to get plugged in, and that then may raise some concerns about the situation. That would lead you to say, I need to answer those concerns before you walk out the door. So this is a very valuable diagnostic tool to help you kind of bulletproof your solution. So from that process, you go into the implementation phase by adding one word to that STEM, by saying what we see ourselves doing now is. And that's when you start to plan your implementation. And we still don't forget the divergent and convergent steps, because here is where we really want to have some fun and lay out all the possible actions we could think of, as many as we could. And like, who's with us, who's against us, who's going to assist us in this process, who's going to resist us, and do we want to work around them? Do we want to maybe win a resistor over? Who do we need to win over? And then you start to get hundreds of possible actions. You converge on the actions that are most relevant, most viable, most useful. And you start to then maybe put them in phases of the project, short-term, mid-term, long-term. And the timeline is completely dependent on whatever project you happen to be working within. And then you create a grid. And this effective grid starts to say, well, what are you going to do? Who's going to do it? By when? And finally, who's going to check? That then sort of becomes the reality check for when the person comes to the meeting and say, well, I hope to get to that. No, that person who checks that person so that when you come to a meeting, everybody's ready to share the next steps and keeps this whole thing going. And that's what really drives this process into reality. Because what I love to say is that you may have a plan for implementation, but you don't have your success yet. What you really have is a theory for your outcome. And you're now turning into scientists to try and prove it. So you go out into the field and start doing. And this is one of the newest iterations of the process. If you remember, when I first laid out the stages, they were in a linear line, and that's how they were when they were initially invented in the late 50s, pretty much through the 2000s. But further review and research and reports from the field, you now see that this is a cycle, and these arrows lead you from clarify, ideate, develop, and implement. Because, as I just said, you may get out in the field and a step for implementation leads you into a whole new kettle of fish. And doesn't mean, oh, this plan was awful. No, what it means is just go back in and start to weigh out these concerns, start to diverge again. How might we? What might we do here? And stick with it and get to your next layer of success, because that's what the real world does. The real world throws you curves, and this type of process, having an energy of using your imagination to keep change and looking at the changes and living with them and dealing with them. And like Einstein says, change your mindset when you have a process. This helps you do it deliberately and quickly, moves you into your next opportunity to solve the problem. So how does it work? Well, let me give you just a couple of reports from the field. You may have heard of the process out there that's really getting very popular called design thinking. Design thinking is built solidly on this process. The only thing different in design thinking is that in the clarify stage, they really lean heavily into empathic research, where they embed with people and do deep dives into, it's not just the group of problem solvers talking about a problem. They go into customer relations and clients and dig as deeply as they possibly can to get to the DNA of what their problem and solutions might be. And the other difference is in the develop stage, they've added the idea of building 3D or any type of prototype other than a sheet of paper that will start to make the solution as real as possible, to give it another layer of rapid testing before they actually step out into the field and start to expend time, money, and personnel. I had a colleague in the Netherlands who was in government, and he was stuck. He couldn't get a project moved along. Another colleague who came to the Creativity Institute ran a process with him for a half a day, and within a week, the government leader who was giving him the yellow or red light not only moved the light to green, offered $1 million to get this project moving. My colleague Roger Firestein worked with GM, and GM was throwing away $40,000 a week on dies that would break from a part that was coming out of a hot machine. And in a one session, he was able to get these engineers to come up with a solution that used a spray bottle and a solution of soap that they came up with for $1.50 to save that money. Recently, I worked with a research group who always could never get the head researcher that was going off to another program to fully close out their research work at this institute. And it led to lots and lots of personnel hours that they really didn't have, but they had to do. So we worked on it for a day and a half, and they were able to create a plan to present to the leadership of their institute, which ended up leading to a standard operating procedure. And once it's in the Bible, everybody has to follow it. So we do get great results from this. and the solutions are clearer, viable, and they pretty much come out a lot faster. But the important thing is that you really, by doing this more frequently, you're practicing. We need to develop this muscle of imagination that we have. Everybody at the beginning said they have it, but 65% of you said you're not so creative. Developing your imagination is the path to getting you into being more deliberately creative. So I'm going to pause for a second. I just ran through that. It's probably the fastest in my life that I've ever run through it. So if there's questions in the chat, you can unmute Rick or Peter, or if, I don't know if you put the mics on for anybody, because I got one more thing that I'd like to do with y'all to kind of leave you with a stronger way to get this imagination thing going. Any questions?
Yes, let me get the questions for you here. There are two of them, and I have one as well. But the first is from Gene. And Anthony, if you can talk more about the rule of thirds.
Yeah. You go into a brainstorming session and you say, okay, let's get our ideas. And they come out, and if I want your ideas, come on, just give them to me. You're probably never going to get much past what's on the top of people's minds. A good facilitator is going to come up with a lot of off-kilter questions like, what would a 5-year-old do? What did you have for lunch last night? Or yesterday? And what would that lunch do to help you? You're trying to trip people's minds up. And by going past the commonplace, the things you walk in the door with, the appointments you just had a minute ago, you then start to get into the newness, new ideas, new thinking. But the further you delve into new thinking and people start to see the generative effect of it, is when people can get to that third of the unknowns, the strange and not accepted as strange, that it all becomes part of the deal. Let's get as many new and different ideas as we can on the table, but it takes a little bit of work.
Thanks, Anthony. There's a second question, and I may mispronounce the name. It's either Stefan or Stephanie. I apologize if I mispronounced. The question is, thank you, Anthony, for presenting this valuable information. What are key considerations for establishing the foundation needed for an effective brainstorming session? That is, personality types, physical environment, medium for capturing ideas, etc.
If you have little to no experience, I would say bring a facilitator in. That helps. If you're going to do it on your own, try and clearly mark out the time that you're going to have it. Try and clearly get everybody to agree that they're going to be engaged for that period of time and not pop out. Leave all the phones off and get your people to focus on this, and have lots of stuff ready. Markers, post-it pads, lots of wall space. And I would say that's just the beginning start. The other thing is to just have a lot of, the third-party facilitator is what really kind of drives you into that deep brainstorming experience. But again, if you're going to do it yourself, have people agree that they're just going to follow those guidelines of diverge and converge. And through Molly and the gang, I'll send some templates out that we can share to everybody, or just use my email. I'll be posting that shortly.
That would be
Anything
great.
else?
Yeah, there are a couple more questions. I'll ask those, and then what we'll do is, after these two questions, we'll go to your activity to wrap up.
We probably have time to take one more, or probably two more.
Okay, well, the first.
Let me just tell everybody if they could have a pencil and paper, or pen and paper ready for the thing we're going to do next.
Great. The next question, Anthony, is from Cecily. What tips would you recommend to do brainstorming virtually and still get great results?
Lots of ways to do that. This would take a little bit of engagement and orientation. There's now some digital whiteboards out there called, one's called Miro and another is called Mural. That literally the basic element of these whiteboards is a Post-it note. You click once and a blank Post-it note shows up. You click second and you can write on it. Another way to do it is to have one person be the co-pilot while you're conducting the facilitation, and people put their ideas in chat. and the co-pilot is starting to grab it. You can use the whiteboard right on the Zoom. There's a lot of steps, a lot of ways. It's doable. It's totally doable, and there's lots and lots of digital tools out there that you can start to employ and use. There's even some idea generation selection tools out there. One is called Storms. Another colleague uses one. I can't remember it, but there are some tools that are coming in that kind of follow our process along, and you can use those.
Great. Anthony, last question, and then we'll go to your activity. And the last question is, how do we sustain creativity in public organizations?
I would say in any organization, go to that idea. It's kind of a two-part thing. If you say, well, you defer judgment, you maybe defer judgment until someone screws up, So I would say you not only defer judgment, but build in the mechanism where you can allow people to make mistakes. Give people the grounds to spread it out and have the support system in your organization to kind of screw up and not screw up so badly that things go south in a bad way, but that you have enough breathing room to fix it. And the more you have this awareness of things not going as planned, and then you just go right back in to say, how might we, and what ways might we? You keep those stems alive from wish to question to determination, you should be pretty successful.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Anthony. Let's go with your activity now.
All right. So now I'd like to give you all something you could take away here as a way to maybe tie this into how to flex your own imagination. And for those of you that want to play, Rick told me that there's a prize available. I don't know what it is, but we'll see what it is. I'm kidding. There's no prize. The only prize is what you're going to walk away with. So I'd like you to get your pencil and paper out, have it right in front of you. And when I say go, I want you to write your name with your non-dominant hand. So the hand you don't use all the time to write your name. Okay. I'm sure most of you did it. So now in the chat, just put a 1 if you thought you did really good, a 2 if you thought you did not so good, and a 3 if it was like you don't even know what it looks like. What's it looking like, Rick? Let's see. Here we go. Oh, someone did a 1. 2.5. I like that. A lot of 2s and 3s. All right. So, I'm gonna. You can keep putting your numbers in. A couple of 1s, which is great.
Yeah, it's a mix. Got a good mix here.
But I think most of them are 2s and 3s, which we could tend to come to expect. But I'm actually going to give you all a 1. And it's not that participation award your kid gets for being third string on the sports team. It really has to do with how we look at creativity and imagination. So there's my signature using my non-dominant hand. And few, if anyone, would say that it says Anthony there. But I can take that and get something out of it by just saying, oh, well, maybe it's a line graph of the progress I'm going to follow when I actually execute my challenge. Or maybe it's one of those balanced rock sculptures that tell me that I need to find balance in my life so I can get these projects done. Or maybe it's steam from coffee and my ideas are that hot. Or maybe my ideas are so hot that they turn into smoke and fire. So what I'd like to leave you with is that you keep your little signature example handy and maybe look at it every once in a while and see what else it might remind you of and what it also might make you think of and how you might flex your imagination to be practicing something like this on a daily basis. And if I leave you with one more thing, if you hear something that sounds ridiculous or sounds undoable, rather than your knee-jerk reaction to it, just pause, take a breath, and say, huh, that's interesting. Tell me more. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Anthony. Wonderful, incredibly useful, and interesting presentation. Thank you. Please join us next week, and we will have Dr. Min Hwan Tu talking about the dark side of leadership. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.